Recording now. So here we go. Everybody, welcome. And if you don't mind, tap your screen and hit your mute buttons, you guys. And so welcome, Michal. How are you doing today?
I have some brain fog today. I was feeling actually better yesterday, and I had enough clarity to be able to do a ton of research for today. But I woke up today, I found out that a dear friend of mine died, and I just was already dealing with brain fog. My right eye is kind of zipping in and out, but not bad. This is not a bad Lyme day. So I'm real grateful to be here and for everybody that's tuning in.
Yay, thank you. So tell us, how long have you had Lyme disease and what co-infections do you have?
Well, my healer had said that I had Lyme for about 25 years. Honestly, I've been sick since I was 6 years old. My immune system just didn't exist. And so, you know, God knows, I grew up in New York City. I went upstate, a lot. I love nature. I loved rolling around in the grass. I could have been bit before, but that's what my healer had said. I have Babesia. I tested positive for Babesia and Bartonella and Lyme.
Okay, oh my goodness, that's a whole lot to deal with. So tell me, what is your daily life like?
Oh boy. Well, I will say that my daily life fluctuates. This is not a static disease. And so that one day I wake up and I feel like I can sort of kind of get out of bed. I feel like some days I wake up and I can think. But there are many days where I wake up and I just lay there and I just can't. Depression. And it's gotten better as of late. But the maddening thing about this disease is that, there's always some kind of fresh hell around the corner. You know what I'm saying? Like you could catch a virus so easily because our immune systems are so low. And then that sets a whole domino effect into place. And then you're dealing with that for a month. So, or 2 or 8, so it fluctuates. I have trouble sometimes making meals for myself. Some days I get up and I can wash the dishes, Lately, my immune system has been more, I don't know why, it's just been more vulnerable. And I was actually housebound the entire flu season. I just could not go out. Now, when I go outside, I actually have to wear a mask. And that's a new thing, and I hate it. So I have a lovely, wonderful boyfriend who I spend time with, but I can't really socialize very much. And it's very isolating. And I do a lot of spiritual and emotional work. This disease is a full-time job. I mean, I literally probably spend my entire day doing protocols, energy clearings. I do Pilates when I can. I try to exercise. Everything is about this. If it's, so yeah, that's sort of what my daily life is like. Occasionally I get these breaks where I can go out. I did a play last year, a musical. That was a big deal for me, and really had to push through that and get a lot of support. So,
right.
But most of the time it's like I described.
Oh my goodness. So what are some of your worst symptoms?
For me, fatigue and depression are probably my worst symptoms. I used to have horrible body pain, and I actually lost complete feeling in my right leg. It just, one day it just felt hollow. And so I've had a lot of what other Lymies talk about. Brain fog, definitely. I felt like I lost so much IQ points for a long time. I felt really dumb, and I used to be a very smart person. And it was very hard for me to to accept this new person that I was. And then that shifted, you know, depending on the treatment protocol I do. So those seem to be my worst symptoms: anxiety, depression, and crushing fatigue. And then, you know, those weird things. Right now, I have this crisis going on, for instance. My healer says that the spirochetes are hunkering down in my endocrine system. So all of a sudden, my prolactin levels just shot up and my nipples are leaking. And I'm not pregnant. I don't have, what do you call it? I'm not pregnant. I'm perimenopausal, but I'm not, I'm actually on hormones for that. And then I get my period. You know, this is the kind of shit that we go through. Like, my breasts are leaking. I have my period. My body is just fucking possessed, you know? And it's been like that, like, my entire life. With these,
oh my God.
Why is this happening? Why do I have a rash all over my body? You know, pussy rash that would come out every friggin' spring, you know, or something like that. And nobody understood it. My friends didn't understand it. People called me a hypochondriac my entire life. And I believed it, you know, and I kept willing myself. I kept, you know, if I pushed myself. I grew up in New York City. I was a go-getter and a overachiever, you know. Anyway, go ahead. Your next question. I don't want to take too much of that time.
How have the doctors treated you? Like, how do they talk to you? How do they listen to you? Let's go that way.
I have two stories. First of all, mostly I get, if I go to a doctor and I tell them chronic Lyme, the nicest I will get is maybe an acknowledgement if they are aware of it. Here in California, in New York, hell no. Hell no. I got nothing but dismissed in New York City. I'm not saying there's not good New York City doctors. I just did not luck out there. I found more help here, but, you know, more consciousness. But I had a guy that was working with me, and he actually found a heavy metal that was real serious in my body, and he knew how to get that out, and, you know, knew about Lyme, and, you know, kind of seemed to be in my corner. And then when I didn't get well from his protocol, he said, oh, well, you're just going to end up in that Lyme bucket like all those other people with Lyme, and you're becoming a professional sick person. And that really, and this is a guy I really believed in, who I thought was the only person in my corner, you know, and that took me a month to really get that mind fuck out of my head. I had another doctor. I was at the peak of sickness. You know, I had lab tests that showed that I wasn't digesting anything. I was malnourished. I was, you know, I was, my hair was falling out. I was highly, highly sick. And he's sitting back and he's listening to me, and I'm laying out all this proof. And he looks at me and he goes, I'm hearing everything that's not good about your life, but tell me, what's good about your life? And I'm like, really? Are you fucking kidding me? If I came in and I was spurting blood from my aorta, this guy would probably ask me what was good about my life. And I'm telling you, this is not unusual. In my support groups, people have been kicked out of doctors' offices. Many doctors, to be fair, many doctors have had their licenses threatened by treating Lyme patients. So there are many doctors who are afraid to have us in their offices. And then there's many doctors who have very strong opinions about this is bullshit, and they don't want anything to do with it, but a lot of them end up taking it out on the patient. There is a real problem with patient abuse and Lyme.
There really, really is. I've got horror stories of my own, how doctors have treated me. It's really not acceptable. And speaking of how people treat you, how has this affected your relationship with your friends and family?
Okay. Well, my family did not believe me my entire life. I was always sick, and I had no support, to be honest with you. None of them believed me. They called me a hypochondriac. And my friends kind of followed suit, and their mothers followed suit. So basically, I grew up in, I had a lot of shame, because I believed that they were right. And I just kept pushing myself. And then when I moved out to California, I just wanted to get well. I didn't give a shit about whether, hey, if I'm a hypochondriac, let's find out. So I got assessed, and I went to a psychologist, what do they call the neuropsychiatric person, where that's what they do, is they basically diagnose you. I went to one, and I went to a psychologist I saw for years, and both of them said, you are not a hypochondriac. You do not have that issue. That's not your, So that was a big lift off my chest. At the same time, I kind of almost wished I was, because then I'd have an answer and something to work on. And yeah, so I did not have support except for my closest my lover, my husband at the time, and now my boyfriend. But now I have this community of people. People are becoming more aware. I feel so much more support. I have the family, my boyfriend's family is incredibly supportive. So that's been a real gift, much more. But we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on why it is that doctors aren't listening to us, and why we can't get treated, why insurance companies aren't covering our treatment, why we're paying for this out of pocket. That's
Right.
something that really needs to be addressed. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. Okay. Woo, I'm sweating. I'm here at Control Center, which is my bed, and I did a ton of research so that I could be factual and about this. So this is a huge topic, and I'm going to do my best here, but with the brain fog. So just bear with me, okay? I'm going to look at my notes a little bit. So basically, there are those things called Lyme wars. That's kind of what the press has called it. There are several government agencies, the IDSA, which is the infectious disease. Oh, I had it written down. Do you remember what it stands for? Infectious disease. All right. Infectious disease something something. IDSA. All right.
Yeah, I think it's the Infectious Disease Society of America or something like that.
Thank you. The Infectious Disease Society of America. They make the treatment protocol. So when you get bit by a tick, and you go to your doctor, and the doctor says, okay, here's 2 weeks of doxy. Here's 2 weeks of azithromycin. They get those protocols from the IDSA. So that's a lot of power, right? The IDSA they don't recognize chronic Lyme disease. They call it post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome. And that may sound like semantics to you, but it's a big deal, because it classifies chronic Lyme disease as a syndrome instead of an infection, and therefore does not recommend antibiotic treatment for chronic Lyme disease. So that's a big piece there. Now they did say eventually, they said, okay, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. What do you call it? Here, let me find okay. But what was happening was a whole bunch of people were taking the 2 weeks, the 3 weeks, and they were coming back still sick. What they look at is these diagnostic criteria. And Shana, do you want to talk a little bit about the Dearborn, the diagnostic criteria from the testing?
Okay. In the earlier 90s, they were trying to work on a Lyme vaccine. And they found out that, oh, I'm trying to be careful how I say this. Okay, so in the early 90s, they were working on a Lyme vaccine.
Right.
And there are two scenarios that happen with Lyme disease. One scenario is that 15% of people with Lyme disease get this arthritic knee, just one knee that gets arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
And 85% of us end up with a B-cell immunosuppression,
Mm-hmm.
which goes into late-stage chronic Lyme disease.
Right.
They brought out this vaccine, and in order for them to say that they have an 85% effective vaccine, they changed the testing guidelines. So the testing guidelines is a two-tier system that only picks up that knee arthritis Lyme disease.
Exactly.
Only 15% of people. So that way they could say, hey, we have an 85% effective vaccine against Lyme disease.
Right.
So now 85% of the people that are sick, like truly sick, don't test, and it's not recognized.
That's right.
And then what happened is when they did the Lymerix vaccine, they actually infected people with late-stage chronic Lyme disease.
Mm-hmm.
And we have
which is not why, I just want to say, which is not why a lot of us have Lyme disease. What they found was that the vaccine was equivalent to as if you just got bit by a tick.
Right.
So, you know, some of us got bit by a tick, and a very small percentage of us actually had that vaccine. So, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. So they ended up pulling that vaccine. So the Lymerix vaccine went away. That's why only a small percentage of us got it from the vaccine.
Right.
But
go ahead.
So now we have this testing system that is very, very, very faulty, that doesn't pick up most cases of Lyme disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so the doctors don't always know this. So they have you get a Western blot test. It comes back negative, and they go, okay, you don't have it, but it's
Right.
a faulty test. And no other disease has this faulty testing system, only Lyme disease.
Yes, and that is part of the reason why the testing is inaccurate, which is what we keep saying.
Right. And then because I forgot what I was going to say.
So
this is Lyme disease, you guys.
For people who don't have Lyme, this is a conversation when you have brain fog. And please be patient. We're actually very intelligent people. We have fog in our head.
Right. The IDSA's guidelines, because they won't change their treatment guidelines, and the CDC is just going along with this, we can't get treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And insurance companies don't have to pay for it, and the doctors are not educated and kept up with the last 30 years of research.
Right.
So we have faulty testing. We have the IDSA with bad guidelines that are outdated, and they know that they are. The CDC has this current research in their possession, but won't do anything about it. They're not educating our doctors, and the insurance companies don't have to cover it. So we have criminal activities going on that we are in lawsuits to sue the CDC for all of this cascade of events because people are dying.
Yes. Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
I do want to say that, just a little bit of background here. The two lawsuits, first of all, another reason why those tests don't pick up is because they're saying that it's actually OSPA, outer surface protein antigen, that is what's making us so sick. That surrounds the Borrelia, which is the Lyme spirochete, and it actually causes us to have our immune systems turned off. So, like AIDS is a T cell immunosuppression. What they are saying now is that Lyme is a B cell immunosuppression. B makes the antibodies. If you are offering an antibody test, which is what they offer, it is not going to show up as positive because we do not have the antibodies. We don't make them. And Lyme is also an extremely sophisticated bug. It knows how to hide from the immune system in several different forms. It morphs into many other different forms. So those people who are the 15% who test positive with the knees, they test positive because their immune systems are stronger and not yet wrecked. And so they are going to get a positive response because their immune systems can do something. Ours can't. So it's an antibody test that they're giving us. There needs to be another test. But part of the reason why the IDSA will not change it, very deep corruption going on. Okay, I'm going to talk about, there was a Connecticut lawsuit filed in 2006 against the IDSA. And what they were saying, they said that their guideline process was subjected to an antitrust investigation by the Connecticut Attorney General, which found that many of the IDSA panel members had conflicts of interest. And if you want me to give you the citations on where I found this information and what I read, PM me, I'd be happy to give you for your own, edification. Then in 2017, another antitrust lawsuit was directed against the IDSA, along with several large insurance companies in the United States. And this was in a federal court in Texarkana, Texas. And they were actually, the allegations were violations of the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO. So what they are saying is that there were people on the panels, and still are, who are colluding with the insurance companies to deny Lyme patients treatment, because IV antibiotics, which is what Lyme patients need to really, sometimes, to be honest with you, it can put some people into remission. Sometimes it's not effective, but it can save a life. Are expensive. And we are talking about a minimum of 300,000 new patients who get Lyme a year, not to mention all the others that are sick. The statistics for how many people actually have Lyme are outrageous. And the insurance companies do not want to cover them. So there is I'll scratch my back, you scratch yours relationship between the insurance companies and certain panel members of the IDSA. When you are talking about making guidelines, the scientific process fails if it can be controlled by a group or groups with a particular agenda. And that is what is happening. This is an issue that is systemic. It's not just about Lyme, guys. You know that we are dealing with corruption in our government on so many levels. It seems like every day we're reading about something else that is, oh my God, we can't trust the FDA. They're supposed to be protecting us. These are our public health organizations that we are supposed to be turning to, and they are taking money from insurance companies and being influenced by outer groups who have an agenda. Meanwhile, people are dying. People are getting sick. This is crime against humanity that we are talking about. And the IDSA, the CDC, where does the CDC picture come in? Okay. The CDC, if you go on their website, will tout the party line of what the IDSA says to do for treatment of Lyme. You get a tick, you go to the CDC site, they will say, 3 weeks of antibiotics, now they say a month, based on the IDSA guidelines, which were decided by a panel of people who have other interests involved in their decision. Until the 2017, the CDC officially endorsed the IDSA, and then they stopped. But what their position is isn't clear. They still won't recognize chronic Lyme disease. They still call it post-treatment. They, blah blah blah. That's what it's still called. In 2016, an anonymous whistleblower group of scientists from within the CDC, calling themselves CDC Scientists Preserving Integrity, Diligence, and Ethics in Research, or known as SPIDER, raised concerns about the CDC's lack of independence and ethics, stating, and I quote, "We are a group of scientists at the CDC that are very concerned about the current state of ethics at our agency. It appears that our mission is being influenced and shaped by outside parties and rogue interests." So there is some shit going on. This is political reasons and money and greed are standing in the way, and people are dying. People are getting sick. And I am stressing this because I am asking for a call to arms. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead, Shayna, a little bit.
It's okay.
I did a study. How did they call Lyme disease the new AIDS, B-cell AIDS. Okay, same thing. Our immune systems are wrecked. We have the infections that normal human beings carry around, like childhood diseases, like roseola. Say you had roseola as a kid. You probably still have roseola in your body, but we hold it down. Epstein-Barr virus. Most of the population has Epstein-Barr virus, but people with healthy immune systems hold them down. People with Lyme, we have flares of Epstein-Barr. Suddenly we're covered with roseola. At the same time, we are fighting the Lyme bacteria and the co-infections. When I say co-infections, those are parasites and viruses that piggyback on the spirochete. And so Bartonella, Babesia, when you hear that, these are all separate infections that are going on in our body at the same time. So imagine if you had the flu, and then on top of it, you had like a cold, a stomach virus, like 5 other infections, that you're fighting. And that's us. This is us. So that's why when you hear somebody with Lyme complaining about Epstein-Barr, they're not making up new, pathologies. Their bodies are unable to fight things that are coming from without and from within. Okay, I sort of commandeered this. I do want to say that it's believed that a vector such as a tick can spread 237 different types of bacteria and many types of viruses and parasites. So when a tick bites you, it's a lottery. You may get nothing, you may get Lyme and one co-infection, or you may get slammed. And the thing is, we are all a tick bite away from being in this same position. All right, I am not trying to be, the world is ending. I'm actually offering some hope, because what we have, what we need, that people in the AIDS crisis had, because I studied ACT UP's videos. I really studied how they did it. How did they finally get people to believe them? They had able-bodied people going out there. Their lovers were dying. Their husbands, their friends were dying. They were a targeted demographic of oppressed people, you know, the gay population. So they had, you know, that they had support within themselves to be like, you know, hell no. But they had the people that weren't as sick as foot soldiers, and they were organized, and they went out and they were obnoxious and loud and did theater, and they figured out who's going to be arrested and who's not ahead of time. This is what we need. We need the people who, all of you who are tuning in right now who are not very sick or don't have Lyme, I am begging you to please help us, not just the people with Lyme, but yourself and further generations, to get out, to call your representatives and demand that we have transparency within the CDC, demand that chronic Lyme disease be recognized as a disease, demand that the crimes that have been committed with the Dearborn parameters of the test, that's what we talked about. Shana was saying that that after the vaccine, the parameters of the test had changed. And she's right. Before that test, they included people like us. People with neuro Lyme were included. But to make it so that it backed the vaccine, then they cut out all the people who only, you know, that were like us, 85%. So accurate testing, you know, and mostly bring the conspiracies to light, bring these people who are in bed with the insurance companies to light. There has to be some ethics here. There has to be some
accountability.
Accountability, yes, and prosecution for those people involved in the CDC who allow these parameters to change so that hundreds of thousands of people can't get help or treatment. And we have the power, we do, as people. And this, let me just say, Shana, shut me up if I'm going too far here. This is the statistics for Lyme disease and how it's spreading. This is based on Healthcare 2018 by Marcus Davidson, an economist and independent researcher. Again, you can always PM me and I will cite you I'll give you my citation. 1 million people are predicted to get infected with Lyme disease in the USA in 2018. Now, the CDC will say 300,000. That is a conservative amount based on the 15% that are going to test with the osteoarthritis in the knee. That does not include the 85%. So that's why it's 1 million and not 300,000. That's in the US. That's the rate of, given the same incidence rate of Lyme disease in Europe as in the USA, then 2.4 million people will get infected with Lyme disease in Europe in 2018. By 2050 in the USA, 55.7 million people, that's 12% of the population, will have been infected with Lyme disease. So this is everybody, guys. And, you know, yes, greed and corruption are keeping the brakes on us getting help, but it's also, we have altered the environment. We have changed the game, and we have got to adapt to the changes and to the destruction that we've done to the earth and what it means now to live in these times. Things are warmer, there are more ticks, there's viruses that are, you know, that haven't been out in the public, that as things melt, they start to come out. So we have to rally, and we do have the power. I also want to just, for everybody's own, you know, reading up and educating yourself, truthcures.org, they talk a lot about what they're doing politically. They have, they are now working with the Department of Justice for a hearing. They have a very detailed, very well documented tier of the Lyme war issue. So so there's two issues. One is the changed parameters of the Lyme test, right? That that was corrupted. And the other issue is, God, I had this so well organized in my brain.
Treatment guidelines.
The treatment guidelines, right, by the IDSA, who are colluding with insurance companies. Okay, so these are two ways that corruption is standing in the way of you feeling safe, of you being able to have a cure, of you being able to get treatment that you know will work and will be safe for your body. That's a big thing. All right. Dana.
Thank you so much. That is so very thorough, and I really appreciate that you went through all of that, and you did so much research, and you were up so late. We were both up late, but yeah, you've done so much research, and you've got such integrity that you're really wanting to make sure that every single thing that you say is the truth that you can cite. We're not trying to just be conspiracy theorists.
No.
We have documentation of these things that we're talking about, and I really appreciate that integrity. Excuse me, my throat. One thing I wanted to ask you is, what kind of advice would you have for someone who might be feeling strange, having weird symptoms that they don't understand what's happening to them and doctors aren't listening to them? What kind of advice would you give to someone like that?
That is a really good question. You know, having to work within a flawed testing system, I always feel uncomfortable when people ask me, because it's like, oh, take this, you know, take a Lyme test, but then it may probably not be accurate. You know, what I would say is, if you can find a Lyme literate MD or somebody who is, they could be a doctor of osteopathy, as long as they are Lyme literate, I would try to get your butt there and have them test you. Because what they'll do is they'll do the regular old Lyme tests, and then they'll do a clinical assessment. Based on that, I would go from there. You know, a lot of, I've had to do, before when I first started and I didn't know I had Lyme, I had to do a lot of, I don't have this, I don't have that, you know, the process of elimination. And that's fine too. That is valid. And, you know, having lab tests to make sure it's not cancer, having lab tests to make sure, you know, all that. Do what you can. But I would say definitely try to get yourself to some Lyme literate professional and have them assess you. Because, you know, if they can start to intervene now, you can have some quality of life. You know, it's still a battle. And I'm not going to say that, you know, it's guaranteed that you are going to be okay or make it, but you have a chance to have some quality. And when you have Lyme, quality becomes very important. It becomes the most important thing. You start to realize, you think less about the future and more about now and how you can have the most full life you can right now.
That is so very true. One thing I want to add in is one way to find a Lyme literate doctor, because they are so downtrodden, and a lot of them get criminal charges pressed against them. They lose their licenses and stuff. They have to kind of practice in secret, basically. They can't just say, hey, I'm a Lyme literate doctor. So one source to find a Lyme literate doctor closest to you is to go to ilads.org. And they have in the search bar, I think you'll go to contact or resources or something, and you'll be able to search for a Lyme literate doctor near you. Yeah. So that's something that you can do. And you're going to have to pay for it out of pocket because insurance doesn't cover it. I've spent $50,000 trying to treat Lyme since 2013.
Yes, and that is actually the average. That's the statistical average of what people spend per year on Lyme disease. A lot of us don't have that, and a lot of us are homeless, We've had to sell or mortgage our homes. Um, the it almost I get choked up, like I can't even express what this life is like, because you are shoved into poverty if you're not rich and you have Lyme. I mean, this is some third world shit that we're dealing with. And it's so unnecessary. The insurance companies can cover some of these treatments. A lot of the treatments that we do are alternative because our bodies have been so wrecked that we can't handle some, heavy duty stuff, and they don't work anyway. A lot of them don't work. Some, who knows? We're all shooting in the dark here, hoping that we can just have some quality of life and not die. And I'll be honest with you. I will say suicide is the highest, that when we die, a lot of times suicide is why. It's not always, but it's the highest, what's the word? The highest biggest reason for our death. And I even will say and share that I hit a point where I looked down the road and I thought, and this was about 4 years ago, maybe a little more, 5 years ago. And I had tried everything that I knew how to do. And I was broke, couldn't work, and very few people believed me. I had no assistance, and I just thought, this is just going to get worse. I was losing sight in my right eye, and I just didn't want 30 more years of this, of degenerative. So I called and final exit, and I was ready to do assisted suicide. And they turned me down, and I actually am glad now, but I have my days. To live without hope, there's no hope with this disease right now. And we're asking people who are able-bodied to give us hope, because there can be. There can be. The science is there to find a cure. The science is there to find treatments that can at least extend our lives and give us some quality. This is hell on earth. I say that because I think about Lyme as like having Alzheimer's, and no disrespect to these diseases. These are devastating diseases, but it's like having ALS, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, Epstein-Barr, all rolled into one, occurring on different days. And we're all different. We all have different symptoms. But I'm not exaggerating with you. I'm talking about some people have the most severe body pain, buzzing under their skin. One of the things that I noticed about Lyme that was the most disturbing was it affects your spirit. It isn't just body and mind, which is scary enough, but I felt cored out on the inside. I felt like a corn husk, like there was nothing inside me. I mean, how does a bug do that? It did something to who I was, and I lost that person. I lost everything of who I was. And people say this all the time in my support groups. People say, I miss who I was. I lost who I was. And to me, that is the most tragic part of this disease. And I can't put it any other way. They call it depersonalization, or something like that. But this shit is so evil that it actually affects your spirit and your soul. Maybe your soul is eternal, but your spirit. And almost daily, we are talking each other down from committing suicide on our support groups. So I try to use humor and laugh, and but this is real stuff, and you don't want it, and you don't want your kids to have it, and you don't want their kids to have it. So please go to truthcures.com, watch what they say, watch Lyme Crime, look up, feel free to contact me for my citations and read, and then please start organizing rallies around the CDC, start marching for us. Do what they did in the 80s when AIDS broke out. We're the new AIDS, guys. We are the new AIDS. And we're all in this together. We're all in this together. This is not about me. It's not about Shayna. It's not about the Lymes here. It's about all of us.
That is so true. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. And I want everyone to know that I am interviewing one Lyme warrior every week, every Sunday at 1 o'clock through this same link. And also at 3 p.m., so in 1 more hour, just a little over 1 hour, I am hosting a discussion with Dr. Dana McGrady, who wrote a protocol, Superfoods for Lyme Disease. Then that was the one element that really turned my treatment around, because I was going through treatment last year and I really felt like I was going to die. And that was the one element missing in my treatment. So treatment plus nutrition, I cannot express that strongly enough. So please tune in to this same link at 3 p.m. Pacific time. That's in about 1 hour. And listen to Dr. Dana McGrady. And thank you, everyone who jumped on. Thank you for anyone who is going to watch the replay. Please share this with your friends and family. We need to get the word out. We need an army of warriors to help us, because we can't do it all ourselves. We're screaming from our beds, guys. We can't all get out on the streets. We need help, okay? So have a great day, everyone. And thank you so much for coming. Bye. Love you, girl.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.